Family, the oldest social structure. Is it still the foundation of a healthy society? Do we even agree on what a family is? We're about to have a family argument right now. As family structures continue to change, we ask, what should the future of family be? In this episode of Doha Debates, we're joined by experts, global thinkers, each with their own take on this issue.
I think the future family should still be marriage-centered because marriage is the most important part of this family.
Well-functioning societies celebrate difference. And so one thing that we can expect to emerge is lots of different types of family structures around the world.
We need to reintroduce a new version of the modern family that combines both the old and the new.
We do need to fundamentally redefine family, not by creating a new structure, but by going back to what worked for centuries.
Their perspectives will be explored and questioned in a majlis-style debate, grounded in understanding and a search for truth. Now, watching over all of this will be a group of university students and recent graduates. They come from different universities in Qatar Foundation's Education City and beyond, and have been preparing for this debate.
You don't owe the world a family, you owe them community, you owe them compassion.
We also need to make the alternatives better for people who have to seek alternatives, who don't have any other choice.
There's people that don't have parents out there, or that their extended family is not competent enough to take care of them.
I think we should go beyond family and maybe speak about community.
You don't owe them a family, you don't owe them community, you don't owe anyone anything. You only owe it to yourself. What do you want to do?
After our guests finish their debate, the students will reflect and deliberate before returning with their own insights, ready to challenge, agree, or offer entirely new perspectives. I'm Imran Garda, and this is Doha Debates. Really good to have you all on the program. Looking forward to this. Family is one of those issues I try to stay out of the way as much as possible. It humbles me. Chika Esiobu, when it comes to family, is it something that is a choice or an obligation?
Family is both a choice and an obligation, because when we are born, we don't choose, but we find ourselves depending on our birth circumstances in many cases. In families, and we have an obligation in that case to do what we are supposed to do as members of the family. At some point, we may have to choose also people we want to be family, but not in terms of discarding or walking away from relationship, but it's a question of probably placing levels on how close we are at some point during the course of our lifetime. So it can be both a choice.
That obligation, is it a moral one, a cultural one? What is it? Define that.
It's hard to define, but it's all encompassing in many instances. Yes.
Anybody want to chime in on that?
So, of course, nothing in life is universally good or bad. We have to deal with ambiguity and ambivalence. And of course, sometimes, for some people, families can be quite challenging. And if we have a narrative that we have an obligation to the family, that can actually maybe lead people to stay in family structures that might actively be harmful to them.
Exactly. Yes.
So is the answer then, it depends?
It's always, it depends.
I think it depends on where your family is and how the family is structured. In regions like the Middle East, in Africa and in Asia, even if you disagree, you can't leave.
And that's bad, so you're imprisoned. Yeah. Like, that's the point.
You'll always be stuck to that family structure that you were born into. So you choose to leave it, but you're still connected to it in an indirect way.
So I think we're talking about two families.
Yeah.
You have the family that you grew up with.
Yeah.
You got your parents, your grandparents. And then when you grow up, you have your own family. And that is the part you might have some choices.
Yeah.
And I think in the old days, and people get married and have kids, but now we see a decline of marriage rate. And so, you know, a lot of people are not choosing that traditional route. But if you look at the data, on average, in general, kids from the two married parents household are still doing better than the kids from the other type of families.
Is that the ideal in in your eyes?
From the research perspective, we still call that the gold standard. That's the research we show.
Is family sacred? Is it something that is a sacred institution, Chika, or is it something that's a flexible, evolving social human contract?
I think we need to perhaps have conversations around what family means. And when we start looking at that, then we're looking at time spent together, stories told, perhaps as far back as 7 generations known, familiarity. And that is perhaps what is so difficult to recreate outside of the people that you grew up with. The sacredness lies in the weight of time, in the weight of information, in the weight of familiarity, of knowledge that comes with living with the same people who see your faults, who see your joy, who share the things about you that no one else knows. And when we really come down to that, we understand that family is sacred. It cannot be recreated flimsily.
But aren't we also sharing trauma, baggage, all of those other things as well?
That comes with it. And then that's where we also make room for the choice that we talk about, right? So at some point, if you consider your values to diverge so fundamentally from your biological family, yes, there might be need to step away a distance in order to recreate, try.
A lot of times you're pretending to abide and align with your parents' values when you're not.
But that's where the challenge is. Are we really trying to recreate that?
I agree with you, Sundus.
It's a question.
Okay, she acknowledges it's a question.
For me, family is a feeling rather than blood or DNA. For me, family is this like being surrounded by love and care and being surrounded by people who share your values. And even if they don't share your values, they're still willing to tolerate them. They're still willing to support you.
I think family is chosen relationships or comfort relationships.
I do appreciate the fact that people are redefining the idea of family. And this is something that's completely fine, because if you ask me the definition of family, I'm not going to tell you it's just always going to be a father, a mother, and kids. So how do you redefine family, and what is important for you, and how do you build your moral compass?
Functioning societies not only tolerate difference, they celebrate difference. If you imagine any characteristic, we would never have evolved to be where we are if we were all the same.
Does he make a good point?
So I want to hear what your thoughts about how harmful the family is, because you mentioned earlier, like, can you give examples?
Well, abusive families, families that intergenerationally transmit trauma. You know, we not everybody grows up in nice environments. Many people don't. We saw during the COVID restrictions, many people were asked to stay at home, where the households were the worst place for those kids to be spending time in, that schools were the front line of social services. And so that's the realities of the world. I mean, you know, we're not in a, you know, we're in a very lovely place here, but not everybody, of course, here as elsewhere comes from those nice, stable two parent families. So we need to be, rather than trying to shoehorn people into one way of living, which might work well for most of the people most of the time, doesn't, as I said, work for all of the people all of the time.
If we stop thinking of the community as our family, we lose a lot of kindness and compassion in society. It really does take a lot of people to help come together to achieve happiness, right? To achieve a sense of collective identity. And if we don't think of community as something that we're responsible for, I feel like we have a lot to lose.
I do think that idea of community and extended families, I think that's probably one thing we would all agree on is going to be a good support network for people. You're absolutely right about loneliness. I mean, I've made this point about celebrating difference. One thing where we are all the same is that we are all social animals, and we literally need social connection to survive in the same way as we need food and water. Unlike food and water, where you die if you don't get it, you quickly adapt and adjust to the lack of social contact, so that then you require less of it, but you get worse off. So physiologically and psychologically, loneliness is harmful. And we've known this throughout history. One of the most painful ways to punish people, solitary confinement. So it's absolutely true. Maybe if some of our conversations, not necessarily just ours, but ours in public policy spaces, started with that fundamental of the human condition, which is connectedness, then we would maybe move out into different ways that might extend into extended families, but could also extend elsewhere.
With all of that in mind, can stronger family ties be the answer to the loneliness epidemic? Is it a simple answer to a complicated modern question, Wendy?
Yes, I believe that's the answer, because the fact is not that the family has lost its appeal. The fact is today we're somehow had a harder time to reach that goal, had a harder time to build this relationship, to get married, to have the strong relationships. Women today are more likely to work, in the workplace. So there's less of a desire to get married because previously a lot of women marry for economic security. But now if you work and you have your own job and you kind of have a less of the need for finding someone who support you economically.
Right. You have a success sequence. Lay it out for us so that we can talk about it, especially with the students later on, Wendy. What's the success sequence in your mind?
So the success sequence is a formula that we have to help young adults to succeed. In the US, it's very simple. First, you finish high school, and then you get a full-time job, and then you get married before having kids. So 3 steps. For young adults who completed these 3 steps, 97% of them are not in poverty. 90% of them are in the middle class. This is the US data. So it's a pretty strong formula to indicate that how important is education, work, and marriage to the personal success.
You're defining success in economic terms?
Yes.
Interesting to look at success in terms of happiness and how people feel about their lives and their experiences in it. And I think that's where you get some of the variation. I like that you stop at high school education, because university certainly isn't for everybody, and certainly doesn't make everybody happy. I mean, it is interesting though, just as an aside, if I may say, that whilst marriage rates have fallen, the desire to get married has been rather sticky.
Yes.
And that's an interesting observation, I think, that as we become progressive, or you might call it other things, over time, the kind of desire to get married has actually remained remarkably consistent and constant. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. But the marriage effects are themselves interesting. Of course, not all marriages end in success. There's a high rate of separation and divorce, and that's very harmful for people, particularly for their happiness and their economic well-being as well. And I do think the evidence suggests that a marriage is, interestingly, given the social narratives around marriage, clearly more beneficial for men than it is for women.
Yes.
It's more of a gamble
Always.
for women than it is for men.
Always.
And if we look at divorce, of course, this may not be itself the answer to everything, but if you look at filing for divorce, it's normally coming from her rather than from him. And we can see in happiness data, you can see in the years before the divorce, she's getting less happy. So that old saying, a happy wife is a happy life, is actually probably true if you want to stay married as a man. But you are more likely to earn more money and live a bit longer if you're a man. The data are very mixed in terms of the impact of marriage on women. So, and some of the healthiest population subgroups, at least, are women who have never married and never had kids.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would disagree. I feel like it's a gamble on both.
There's a lot of studies that say that single women are happier.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I want to go back to a few points you made about whether marriage is only good for one gender.
No, not only. I wasn't saying only.
Okay.
I'm saying it's much more of a gamble. The data suggests there's more of a risk involved in marriage for women than there is
Greater
for men.
investment for women.
First of all, we're talking about happiness part, and married mothers are actually the happiest among the groups of women when you look at women by their marital status and whether or not they have children. Married mothers are the happiest, and they're happier than the single childless women and married childless women and single mothers. And same thing goes with married fathers as well. So it's a similar impact. And also...
Sorry, can I ask a stupid question? The happiness index or whatever it is, Is it self-reported or is it based on some other
Yeah,
kind
it's
of metric?
self-reported.
Okay.
The
Just
data we use
clarify.
is called the General Social
Okay.
Survey. So we ask people, you know, how do you feel these days? Are you
see.
very happy, somewhat happy, or not happy? So when you compare to married men versus married women, I don't see a difference in terms of their happiness overall.
Chika, a lot has been discussed. Bring us back to a center of gravity here.
We cannot look at the family without looking at the macro, the system that produces the family. And when we look at the rise of neoliberalism in the 70s and 80s, and the idea of humankind as an economic being, the emphasis on achievement, career growth, and on just being able to achieve what is seen as the idea of success by many. So we started to see children being raised without resilience for relationships. And if I am a successful medical doctor or a lawyer or an architect, then I think I am successful in life, and any other thing is a distraction. And that takes away the resilience to want to work on a relationship because, hey, everybody thinks I'm all that. So we see children not being nurtured to see relationship as critical and foundational in life, but just to go to school, get all those degrees, get wealthy, and you're good to go. Life is good. And what do we want these children to do when they become adults and can function in relationship? That's what society tells them. That's what they've been raised to do.
In South Africa, the Zulu term Ubuntu, right? It's I am because we are connected to family, right? I am because we are. Have we lost that in the modern world?
Again, it's Ubuntu is an African philosophy popularized by Bishop Desmond Tutu in his seminal work. And outside of Africa, we see that in other communities being practiced without being called Ubuntu. The West, of course, does not have that kind of worldview about life. And because the West is so technologically advanced, we see other societies, including Africa, copying Western way of thinking today, where we are gradually walking away from the importance of family relationships, extended family relationship, for instance. Parents who see children as their property to be flaunted, having raised a lawyer, a doctor, a successful person, and being cheered by the world. And this child is not able to build community because the child was not exposed to extended family, to relationship that tested this, the children while they were growing up, and that made them see human beings as human beings, to love and respect, to think of community. It's hard for the children to grow up into adults, to stay in relationships where they are not praised the way their parents praise them round the clock. And of course, if they are successful in their careers, then that's life. But then we see a rise in mental health problems with these children. It's a lot going on, and they don't understand why they are so successful and still so miserably unhappy.
I agree with you in terms of relationship being very important, and also in terms of the young people today are lacking the skills to have good relationships. Young people get a lot of education training and get a lot of work training, but they never get any training in relationships. And nobody get that. Like, especially if you come from a family that does not have a good role model, like your parents don't have a good marriage. And then, where do you learn? Like, they don't know what a healthy relationship look like. So I think the education part is very important.
Can I say I agree with everything that's been said about the relationship aspect, but it doesn't have to naturally be in a marriage. I mean, the point is, if I was asking someone about happiness that wasn't a happiness question, it would be something along the lines of, do you have someone you can talk to about stuff? Because that's a fundamental relational aspect, but it may or may not be within a marriage.
So in a nutshell, as a sort of hors d'oeuvre to my discussion with the students over there, your advice to them on this issue of family and love and happiness and everything that proceeds from there, this concept of family, your advice to them is what?
My advice is to be human
Be human.
Be human. And being human is about connection. Build connection with family, build connection with friends, close relationships. And at the same time, find your self-actualization within community. So if we focus on relationships, then if I want to be a medical doctor, that means I care so much about people's health that I see myself as that kind of person who will invest my emotions into making sure that that one person in front of me is giving the best treatment available, and nothing to do with the prestige of being a medical doctor or being better than anyone else. And that's really deep. That takes a lot of work if that's not cultivated within family situations. For a young person to cultivate that mindset will be take a lot of intentionality on the part of that person, and self-examination and study to get to that place where we can
a lot of
become
personal and communal cultivation. Paul, what's your advice to them?
Well, if you're a man, say, will you marry me? If you're a woman, say, maybe not. No, that's only partly joking. It's about connection. I think that's it. I mean, you want to carry with you through life relationships that are important to you. And as I get older, as an older man, I'll just quickly say, my son asked me recently, we have a teenage son, what I regretted in life, which I thought was a tough question, because my initial reaction was nothing, of course, but there will be things. And I think, if anything, there's probably 2 or 3 friends in my life that I've lost contact with that in hindsight I wish I'd stayed in contact with. And I think that if you carry some people with you through your life, just by dint of knowing them for such a long time, they could be family, they could be friends, they could be people that you're at university with now. I think that's a good piece of advice.
That's beautiful. Shareefa, what's your advice to them?
Surround yourself with people that help you see the right and wrong. And that could be family, that could be friends. And stay true to yourself. Don't get influenced.
Okay, Wendy?
So I want young people to know that marriage is a great thing. It provides the strongest relationship, and don't be afraid. Go out and date and get married.
We're not afraid, we're okay. We're not afraid, we're okay.
That's been great. We've heard some great ideas here, some powerful ideas, and we've had a good dialogue here for quite a while. The time has flown. Now, beyond the arguments are lived experiences of closeness, of absence, of longing and love. And throughout this debate, our group of students, there's been sort of grappling with all of this. They've been listening carefully, listening to all your ideas, all your arguments. Now it's the next phase of this program. I'm going to go next door. I'm going to join them as they reflect and deliberate on what they've just heard. After their discussion with me, they'll return with me to share their own perspectives along with questions and challenges.
All of the speakers, when they were making a point, they always added like evidence and arguments behind it. I feel like even if the sentence that they started with could be controversial, I feel like when people jumped at it straight without hearing their argument, I felt like that was unfair, because the arguments that especially Ms. Chika was making, I feel like was grounded in evidence. So I don't believe in taking anything, even if I disagree with it, at face value. So I was really into it.
Hello again, everybody.
Hello.
It does sound as if everybody's ready to get married now after that conversation. Sundus,
Yeah.
What resonated for you out there?
I would say that I agree with most of what Dr. Paul was saying.
Oh, interesting. Paul Dolan. Why?
I feel like he really brought in an intersectional point of view. And he was not very, how do I say? He was not very narrow in his opinion. He took in different perspectives, even if some people call them exceptions. I think he acknowledged that not everyone's life goes down a linear path, and that it will always result in success. I really, really appreciated that.
So that it depends.
Yes.
Well, did that sort of resonate with a lot of you?
Yeah, I think, because when I was listening to what Dr. Wang was saying about sort of what kind of the ideal path to success is, right? I was thinking about it and I was thinking, well, that's probably something I would actually do. Like, I think I would follow that path in the future. But sort of what I didn't like was the idea that that is the way to personal happiness. That's sort of just like the ideal path, the gold standard.
The gold standard.
Or whatever you want to call it, right?
The problem is that even if we want to like find this kind of stability, to find this kind of like sense of community with our family, the problem is that we aren't able to. To give you a personal example, I come from Nepal, and there are entire villages in Nepal where there are no men, there are only women, because all of the men are out earning money in the Gulf or in Korea or in Australia. There are villages where there's all the elderly and only children, and of course, because the traditional role of men is being fulfilled by other demographics. So even though those people crave the traditional structure, because of the way that the economy is structured, they simply cannot do that.
I feel like this debate has two different layers. One is when you're taking decisions to build a family, and the other one is connection with the current families that you have. And I feel like we need to differentiate whenever we're talking about it in terms of the context. And I feel like the success sequence that we're talking about is more about building a family and trying to attempt to build a family, right? And I do appreciate it, and I feel like it's valid to an extent, because I feel like the most important point about this is the idea of empowerment to women, actually, because, you know, the very end point is, if you want kids, do not have kids before marriage. For the safety of the woman, for the kid and the family, and the commitment of the man psychologically as well. Because I feel like men in the current day, they try to escape the idea of marriage, because we can see this trend even amongst like celebrities, where they're just in relationships for years and years, and they have kids and they have the money, they have all the services, but still at the end of the day, you know, yeah, they're not getting married. Why? Like, what does the title of marriage has to do?
Can I intervene? The only issue that I have with Dr. Wendy Wang is that she's kind of like enforcing gender roles that can be a bit toxic. So I think marriage can be helpful, but you don't need it, you know? Like, if you really love a person and you want to create a family, you don't need that, oh, just because like the government like assuring you that you're married, you know?
Maybe we're going into a different conversation of regulation. I truly believe children shouldn't be brought into this world unless they have that sort of protection. Like, a lot of the problems we see in, you know, in developed countries even, is that these kids are being born out of like wedlock. So if a man decides, you know, he wants to cheat or leave, then women have nothing to fall back on. You know, you don't even have the government to hold that man accountable. So maybe we should be looking more into what the government could do to make it better.
Thinking of family as, like, I don't know, an island of freedom. No, you are in a social structure, you are in a legal structure, you are in a medical structure, you are in social structure, yeah, like you have the state, all these institutions which are involved in family, who decide what is family, what is not family. If you are a family, if you are married, you have the rights to this. You are not married, you cannot do that. I don't think it's, do we have to have family or not? Of course we need family, but what do we name a family, right? What is our definition of family? How we make a family equal?
My family has been amazing. I have, you know, nothing to criticize, alhamdulillah. Like, I'm honestly very blessed. But the thing is, I have peers who, majority of the time, their at-home situation isn't positive. And so when I'm hearing statistics like 97%, and it's like, who are these people that you're meeting with such happy lives? Because I'm not, like, you know what I mean?
For me, on a personal note, I had the privilege of my extended family like come in when I didn't understand things, when I didn't understand people, emotions. They stepped in to take care of me. They stepped in to take care of my health. I grew up as a very sick child. So I had my uncles and aunties taking care of me when no one was there, basically. And I would not be here if it was not for my extended family like stepping in. I would be someone else entirely, and I would not be an empath.
Also, following on your point, I think one of the issues I had with the women, like the speakers, was that they were putting such huge emphasis on blood, like on blood connections. So like they were saying like, oh, you will feel more connected to your family because they're your blood, or and I was like, no, like, and they were saying like, your family will always know you better, or you will trust your family more. I think they need to kind of like turn it around from just blood relations. My upbringing has influences a lot how I want to live. I do appreciate families that are very close-knit. I like people who like community. But in my case, my mother died when I was 7, and my father passed away when I was 4. And I ended up being an orphan very early in life. And because my family is very fragmented, I ended up living with multiple aunts in different countries. And so I ended up leaving my family very early. When I was 17, decided to move to Mexico, made a lot of friends there, and then decided to come here.
I want to talk about loneliness, because loneliness has been spoken about in the context of well, if you have a strong social structure, if you have a strong community, if you have a strong family, if you have these things, it's a cure for loneliness and selfishness and so on. And so, I mean, I know a lot of lonely, selfish, miserable people in marriages, in family structures with communities. So talk to me a little bit about this.
I think sometimes family can be more isolating than if you were alone, like just alone. I think like families, sometimes they make you feel more isolated in a family, in a traditional family structure as well. Sometimes if it's abusive or if it's like sometimes you don't agree with them and these things, because you're supposed to agree with them, right? And you're supposed to grow up like them. You're supposed to adjust according to them. So it's also very isolating because you like sometimes you don't have your own experience. You're experiencing life for them.
It makes me think also the gendered aspect of the guest. I was thinking, is Professor Dolan that heard because he's a guy, so he's legitimate to criticize family? If it was a woman, it would be like, oh no, this is this poor woman who is not getting married, so she's just frustrated. She cannot be heard on this kind of topic.
The messenger being crucial to the message, how the message is perceived.
I was kind of thinking like the things that Dr. Wang was saying, particularly towards the end when her advice was go get married. I was just thinking in my head, well, you know, if that was like a 50-year-old male professor on there saying that, that would look pretty bad.
I appreciate the fact that she's saying, oh, get married first and then have kids, because this is something that is very important when it comes to like Western like regions of the world, where there is a lot of this whole concept of we can have a relationship that can go for like 10, 9, 8 years completely fine, and we can have kids in that relationship, but we're not getting into the point of marriage. And this is like a very interesting question mark.
There's this new sort of agenda on the horizon saying you have a responsibility to make babies, to get married sooner, and to do your duty to contribute to the gene pool. How do you guys feel about this?
I understand that we are also in a society, right? We have to worry about each other. But if you come up to me, a woman who's gonna give you that baby, and you say, you need to give me that baby because we need to save the world or whatever, I'm gonna be like, hell no. Are you gonna pop it out?
No.
I'm saying, like, I understand the necessity of having to like proceed, but you cannot force that onto a woman, like, honestly.
Let's put a pause on saving the world for a moment and just go back to the question of when, you know, two parents, whether they adopt a child or not, they, I believe, not certainly entitled to have some of the love back when they grow up. Look, me personally, I don't believe in unconditional love, but I do believe when parents give their love, when they give the support, when they provide the education for their children, why should I not feel like I need to give that back to my parents? And I want to ask you, when you grow up, you feel like your children should, and if you decide to have children, should you feel like your children should have the right to ignore you? Even if you give them all that love, all that education, all that support.
You would hope that those morals would give them the mindset to be like the same as yours. So for me, like,
but obliging them is not love. I cannot obligate someone.
No one said about forcing. You can't force anyone to do anything.
For me, like, I'm, you know, I'm Palestinian. I'm a Muslim.
Me too.
We kind of have the same ideologies. Like, when my parents get older, I'm going to be their number one. I'm going to be there to help them 100%. But that's because they instilled those values in me. So if you are coming from somewhere where those values are not really, you know, expressed, or it's not something that anyone really talks about, or nobody really cares about it, then you kind of feel you have that choice. And at the end of the day, like, would you really want someone to take care of you that doesn't want to?
When I think of family, I think of people that I love, people that I share values with, morals with, and that I can rely on and depend on. That's it.
I agree.
Okay. I want a nuclear family, I want a wife, kids, and I want the connection with extended family. But I would also push those around me once they're ready to actually take this step as well. And the reason I see it as something that is important to also be connected to the extended family and actually to push for this sort of structure as soon as possible is the idea that we have identities, we have our own self-structure as well. And this is something that they also talked about, the idea of self-actualization and actually trying to understand yourself. And me having my kids, the younger I am, the more I have the energy to connect with them and be able to actually build a better moral compass with them. We actually share this household as a whole system, and then they will be able to understand how
men were
the
like
system.
you. Perfect world if all men were like you.
Thank you, thank you.
My friendships are important to me in a social aspect, in terms of having people there for me, but also to be there for people. I feel like I was put on this earth to help people, And I feel like a lot of the times, even if it's really tiny things, like I love to help my friends through like little breakups or like they had a bad day or, you know, something even that we might consider minuscule in the grand scheme of things. You know, I am a product of every person I've ever met.
If I'm going through a hard time, I have my friends. I have one of my best friends that we have been best friends for almost 10 years right now. So it's very easy to just call them, contact them about whatever. And the same thing with my mom. Like me and my mom do not have any sort of boundaries when it comes to whatever talks we're talking about. So I can come to her and sometimes I'm like, hey, look, I know that there are traditions, but I'm talking to you as a friend right now.
So I think my friends were the ones who show me that I am important, I am a person that needs to be loved. And yeah, of course you fight with your friends too, you know, they're different human beings, but fighting with them, like disagreeing with them, meeting their families, it's actually very insightful and it makes you happy. I feel like even in my boyfriend's family, I found a family. Like it's not only about my friends, but even their extent, like their families are also becoming my families. And I think that's kind of beautiful. I really love them.
I'm looking forward to you all engaging with our guests. Shall we go and meet them? Let's go. Follow me. As promised, I came with company.
You're back.
Yeah, they come with challenges.
Oh dear.
Questions, compliments also. Lots. Yeah. All right, here we are. I think before we get all of you to engage with each other, I think we sort of need a little bit of a sort of historical throat clearing, Paul, about how we got to family as it's defined in the factory settings these days.
Well, I think one of the things that academics are very fond of doing is talking outside of their areas of expertise. And that would feel very much outside of my area of expertise. One thing I could say is around marriage, perhaps, which is, of course, an institution that came into being around the time of the agricultural revolution, where we lived to sort of 35, 40 was old. And it's interesting, of course, we're now living to 80 plus. And whether we might want to revise and update some of our views around those institutions, given those massive increases in life expectancy.
Chika, I mean, the idea of the norms that were created today, how did we get here?
What we know is that marriage is an innate desire that has endured till today, which Paul talked about earlier when he said that even though marriage is declining, the desire to marry has not declined. So before we cast aspersions on 35,000 years of history, and before we mock what people have lived with and built over the years, let's step back and look at what happened during the Industrial Revolution. We look at the environment today, and we know there is a crisis because we can feel it. We can't dismiss that any longer. And I would dare to say that it is the same historical process that produced environmental crisis today that is as well produced the social crisis we have with the family. And instead of mocking what we have today or what we had previously, why do we want to do that with the family, with marriage? It has worked for years. It has preserved society. It has produced stability. So instead of throwing the baby away with the bathwater, we need to step back, just as we are stepping back with the environment and asking questions about where we went wrong and how we can correct the environmental crisis we face today. Where did we go wrong with family, and how do we correct the social crisis we face today with family?
Family is there from ancient times. Every society has family. Marriage is also universal. I think the big issue that we're talking about crisis, it's a fertility crisis, because in many developed countries, and in a lot of developing countries as well, people are not having children. That is a crisis.
Okay. One of the issues, one of the things that did elicit a lot of conversation when we were in the other room was whether it's this next generation's responsibility to fix the birth gap.
You know, when we talk about declining birth rates in places like, you know, the UK or South Korea or wherever else it is, we're kind of forgetting that actually in most other parts of the world, the population is absolutely booming. I mean, you know, we think about,
in sub-Saharan Africa, I mean, that's where most of that increase is. That's where you'll see most of
sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, parts of Latin America, the population's doing just fine. There's no decline.
But if you sorry to interrupt, but if you compare the same country like 30 years ago to their current fertility rate, I think the trend is going down. even for those countries.
The reality is that in countries like South Korea and Japan, for example, with really low birth rates, they also have really xenophobic immigration policies that make it actually really hard for them to kind of, jumpstart population growth.
You can't ever look at any of this evidence free of context and free of social pressures and free of judgments and free of the way that people are expected to live their lives. You can never do that. So a really interesting question would be, what would the world look like if we could free ourselves of those kinds of constraints? I think that's a really fundamentally important question. But it is true that there is a two-parent premium. That's well established. So why don't we focus much more of our attention on the impact that parents, whether married or otherwise, are having on their children and their child's outcomes? That would be something that we could all presumably agree on. Okay. That places it in the context of a family, places it in the context of an extended family, places it in the context of wider community, places us in the context of moving away to some large degree from the focus on ourselves.
How did we get to having to legislate on emotions? How did we get to having to ask and demand people to get married and have children? It's supposed to be a thing of joy and excitement and what we do. What happened, and we need to get to the root of what happened in order to understand how to respond as emotional beings.
So what do you think happened?
We had mentioned that earlier about the fact that we reframed human beings as economic beings.
Yes.
It became about your paycheck, it became about your net worth, about your status, about how early you leave in the morning and get home in the evening and are shared by your peers, and less about connection, about the joy I get at seeing another human being born into this world, and or a friend or my mom or my grandma, and spend time and just be human.
So could I ask you specifically, you worked in Rwanda, yes?
Yes, I did.
Tell me about that experience and tell me about being able to see the positive in that light.
Rwanda used a traditional restorative justice mechanism called gacaca, rehabilitating offenders, saying that we don't want to send you to jail or kill you. We want to humanize you, because it's not just about you, it's about the next generation and the next generations to come. We want our children to see humanity in adults because they need to believe in the goodness of humans so they can want to have children. They can see the world as beautiful and peaceful and joyful. And that's how Rwanda used gacaca to try to restore and rehabilitate as many offenders as possible. And that's something that indigenous communities have, which is restorative, restoring the human person to their core humanity, which we believe is fundamentally good.
So Dr. Chika, I really appreciate how you highlight this tension between neoliberalism and the neoliberal economy today that prioritizes individual gain and mobility over like traditional system such as Ubuntu that appreciates collectiveness, right? But I feel like in today's world, we don't really have a choice to choose between them. I feel like the economic pressure is too strong, and I feel like it's winning over this kind of collective value that indigenous system and tradition have. So what can we as a community do, or like how do we navigate that as a community to get to a point where we believe in having children, we believe in having our futures?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I hear students ask that question a lot. We need to go back and study traditional societies. We can't run away from that, really. If there's something that has worked in the past, and not everything in the past worked, but if there's something that has worked, that has kept people sane and happy and connected and excited to be alive and excited to have children and have families, that truth exists. Indigenous people can help us retrace our steps and find out how we can redraw our compass to get back to being human, one person at a time, one community at a time.
Paul, you want to come in? Just one second. Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a super question. So it's clearly a collective action problem. It's not something that any individual can swim against the tide on their own. And so recasting what success looks like is clearly going to be part of it. It's very interesting we have this term social mobility. We don't actually mean that at all. We mean economic mobility. We don't mean social. There's nothing social about it. It's about getting better and higher paying jobs. That's actually what it's about. So if we recast social mobility to be truly social, which makes it relational as well as economic, and if we change our incentives, the things that we celebrate, the things that we post about, the things that we rank people about, given that we are driven by status, that's part of, we care about reputation. So we need to recast some of what we measure as being reputationally good to be broader and to absolutely fundamentally include, which I think we must all agree on everywhere around here, the relational aspect.
Yes, relationship is important, but you get the strongest relationship in marriage. So we have seen in the past 20 years also a decline of happiness in the US.
Like if you look at the US right now, about 40% of children are born out of wedlock. So think of like if you're pushing this narrative that, you must be in a nuclear family, you must have two parents and all of that. So are you essentially telling the child that they are not worthy, that they are inadequate in some way?
Can I just go back to the 40% number? Yes, so 40% of the babies born in the US are to single parents. But that's the problem. So it's not like we're accepting the fact, and actually, a lot of social problems in the US are driven by the family breakdowns.
We can put the children front and centre, and I agree that parents need to step up and we need to create a much more powerful social narrative around both parents being in the child's lives. If you're going to say that that has to only exist within marriage, then for all those couples for which marriage is not going to work, you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Let people make the families that they want to make. Let people live life the way that they want to live, and let people not make families. Some people want to live alone. Let them live alone. Like, why is somebody pushing a secret recipe down my throat? Like, I don't need you to tell me the secret recipe. I'm fine. We're good.
When you have a cookie cutter model and you want to impose it to the world, you are deconstructing other structures that you don't understand because you didn't make the step to go to open, to hear them, to listen to them. And very important to listen to them, not only hear them, and to understand the way they live, their society, their environment, the structure, and then navigate it in their own way. I think it's also super important to acknowledge that marginalized people and some other communities always blamed in the system, being like, oh, there was an essentialist family structure in the past which worked for everyone. No, there have always been people in the margins which had like other ways of living, but they were not given a platform to talk.
And a final spin of the wheel here. Paul, what have you taken out of this conversation with the students?
It's been absolutely wonderful to hear from everybody because I've long been interested in why we care so much about how other people live. When if we just get on living our authentic lives ourselves, cohesively, knock yourself out. Do what you want. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wendy, what did you take out of this?
People want to be happy. So if we know what's the secret of happiness, we should tell them. We should not hide it.
Okay, Shareefa?
Well, I think you're not far from where we were when we first thought about marriage. It's the same issues, the same questions that we had, the same challenges. It's just the choices that we made that made the difference.
Chika?
It takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It takes a village. If you were not raised by a village, then something happened along the line. But you can build your village, and it will be a joy raising a family with a village.
Thank you all. That does bring us to the end of this episode of Doha Debates. I thank you to our speakers, our students, and all of you for watching and listening. As always, we've explored bold ideas, we have challenged assumptions, and I hope we have opened up space for understanding each other with respect and curiosity at the center. But of course, the conversation does not end here. Now it's your turn. What do you think? You can share your thoughts, your questions, and your perspectives. We are listening. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Honestly, to me, family is very, very important. It's like something that I noticed today. A lot of people would see that, oh, there's always a negative perspective to families. What about abusive families? What about hurtful families? This is something that I completely understand, and this is why I have the general statement of families build your moral compass at the end of the day. Whether it's a healthy family, whether it's a bad family, you understand what's good and bad, and this is how you can actually move in and develop in life.
When you come from a family-oriented society where if you belong to a two-parent household, it's easy to have the luxury of beliefs. But I've had the privilege and the honor of knowing people who come from so-called broken families, and they've taught me what it is to be tolerant. They've opened my eyes to how you can have a different sort of life. So if it wasn't for those people, I can very well see myself not having these ideas.